A terrifying accident, a mysterious savior, and a mother's ultimate triumph. What really protected her child will shock you. Rebecca and Mark were a newlywed couple that had been enjoying the bliss of marriage for many months now. They were surrounded by warm, welcoming and friendly neighbors and friends in their small community in their town. Rebecca and Mark knew this was the picture-perfect place to start their family. The area was very serene, very beautiful, and a safe place to raise children. Mark worked as a financial consultant in one of the biggest companies in the city, and Rebecca was a marketing and brand manager who mostly worked from home. Together, they made the perfect couple, and when they saw the house they currently live in, they knew it was going to be their dream home. 7 months had passed, and Rebecca and Mark were expecting their first child. The couple eagerly anticipated the child's arrival as they set up and decorated the spare room they had in preparation for the baby. The couple made sure they had every single item they needed, every type of furniture gadget, clothes and books. They wanted to be the best parents they could to their baby. Rebecca especially was proud of her baby bump, and they did not hesitate to speak to anyone who would care to listen to how excited she was about the baby she was going to have. She would tell everyone how happy she was to become a mom, and how much love her child was going to receive. "I can't wait to meet our little one, Mark. Can you imagine the adventures we'll have?" Rebecca's eyes sparkled with anticipation as she shared her vision with the future. She had these types of conversations every night, but neither she nor Mark were tired of talking about how excited they were to be welcoming their baby girl soon. Mark, equally thrilled, placed a hand on her baby bump. "Our family is going to be amazing, I can feel it." Even though Rebecca always shared how excited and ready she was to have a child, underneath that happiness was a fear that she could not shake off. Rebecca had a terrible fear of dogs. It may seem irrational and silly to others, but to her it was a serious fear. She was afraid of all types of dogs, and would often avoid areas with dogs or sometimes avoid going out altogether. This fear was deeply rooted in her childhood, and even though she thought she had outgrown this fear by now, it seemed that her motherhood and the need to be the perfect mother to her child, this fear came back to haunt her. It all started years ago. Rebecca was about 6 years old and spent the summer in her cousin's family home. She was the youngest of all her cousins and would often get picked on or teased. That particular dreadful day, she and her cousins had been playing outside. Her cousins had 2 dogs that were not super friendly, and she was always careful to stay away and not interact with them. They had been playing a game that required running around, and it had been fun up until one of her cousins, the older one, decided she would go unlock the dog's kennel and let them out. Little Rebecca was terrified as she saw the 2 big dogs running towards her. She tried to run into the house, but her cousins had rushed inside and locked the doors, leaving her out. She could hear them laughing from inside as she ran around the house while the dogs chased her. Her heart pumped so fast as tears fell from her eyes. She was truly terrified as the dogs barked at her heels. Rebecca ran so much, but then slowly began to get tired. She didn't know how much longer she could outrun the dogs before they caught up to her. Rebecca tripped and fell on the dirt, scraping her knee in the process before she could pick herself up again. The dogs ran up to her. She was quivering in fear, and although the dogs did nothing to her but sniff her and walk away, Rebecca never truly got over that traumatic event. Mark, always the supportive husband, would try to ease her worry or fear whenever she had these flashbacks of the traumatic event. He would hold her hand and remind her that this happened a long time ago, and there were lots of friendly dogs that would not hurt her. "Rebecca, not all dogs are harmful. Many are loyal and kind. We can work through this fear together," he reassured her. Despite his efforts, Rebecca's apprehension and fear did not fade away. It stayed with her. It was so bad that in her final moments of pregnancy, she remained mostly indoors and would hardly leave her house. Even when she did leave her house, she would avoid areas that were populated with dogs, like parks or high streets. In the instance where she saw a dog, she would make a point to cross the road. She was more worried about bringing her child into this world, where there was a possibility of what happened to her when she was young, happening to her own child. She didn't want her unborn child to have to navigate this world with such fear. She wished she could shield the baby from all harm. Months later, the couple's joy reached new heights with the birth of their baby girl. Rebecca, now fully immersed in her motherhood, dedicated herself to the child's well-being. She made sure to take a picture and log every milestone of her daughter. Her first smile, her first laugh. Rebecca recorded her baby's first time sitting up and crawling. She was so amazed by how quickly babies grew and developed. Rebecca was so overcome with joy, because being a mother was everything she had imagined it would be. She loved her daughter and was so proud of the little milestones she was able to share with her. Most times, Rebecca and her daughter were together. Rebecca took her baby everywhere with her when she went for errands, doctor's appointments, grocery shopping. Wherever it was, they were always together. But on this rainy day, Rebecca had been very busy with work and could not leave the computer. Her daughter had a routine hospital checkup, and normally Rebecca would be there to take their child, but on this day she couldn't. Mark, on the other hand, was eager to step in and do the hospital run. He didn't want to say anything directly, but he had been feeling a little left out when it came to taking care of and parenting their baby. He knew that Rebecca was being very protective and nurturing, like a mother should be, but he also wanted to be a good father to his daughter and take some responsibility.
"Are you sure, Mark? I mean, we could just reschedule the appointment for another day,"
Rebecca said, already sounding worried and anxious. It's not that she didn't trust Mark to take care of their baby. She just liked to be present concerning anything because she was always worried that something bad would happen. "You know how hard it is to get an appointment. It's fine, I've got this," Mark replied as he buckled their baby daughter into the car seat. His words appeared to settle Rebecca's worries a little, and she waved them goodbye and kissed both. She would enjoy the much-needed break and time apart and focus on her work. The clouds ahead gathered and everything grew darker. The weather forecast said there would be some rain, but nothing too serious. The hospital checkup went well, and Mark and Rebecca's baby was healthy and in perfect shape. Mark was pleased to hear this and eagerly called Rebecca on the phone as they pulled out of the hospital. Rebecca sighed with happy relief, as she was glad to hear that her baby was fine, and she couldn't help but feel worried as their family drove back in the rain. In the hour that Mark had spent at the hospital, the forecast had changed from slightly rainy to heavy storm. The rain was heavy and bolts of lightning flashed in the sky. Rebecca told Mark how worried she was about him driving in the rain, and how it would take them a long time to get back home because of possible traffic. "We'll be fine, Rebecca, it's just a little rain. I'll take a shortcut. I want to get back to you as soon as possible," Mark assured her. The sky had completely turned dark, and night came as Mark took a smaller back road to avoid traffic on the highway. The rain was coming down much harder than he anticipated, and he struggled to see his way through the road. The winds picked up and were heavily beating down on the car. The roads were slippery, and Mark tried to drive as slowly and carefully as possible. His baby gurgled happily in the back seat, unaware of anything going on. Suddenly, out of nowhere, a massive tree branch hit the hood of Mark's car. He pushed down hard on the brakes. It happened so fast that he jolted to a stop and hit the back of his head on the side of the car. The baby screamed, and Mark turned quickly to see if she was alright. She seemed unhurt, but he needed to go around and check properly. Mark unbuckled his seatbelt and stepped out of the car. The rain was coming down more heavily on him. Mark's head felt light as he circled to meet his baby in the back seat. He could hear ringing in his ears while he opened the door. The baby had stopped crying at this point and was breathing shallowly. "It's okay, baby. You're okay," Mark whispered. As he leaned in to unbuckle her seatbelt, his vision began to get blurry, and the ringing in his ears became louder. Slowly his vision began going black, and he felt himself falling backwards as the rain pelted him, and he lost consciousness. Back at home, worry crept into Rebecca's heart as Mark's call went unanswered. The pit in her stomach deepened. She knew something was wrong. The weather outside was getting worse, and Rebecca could not just sit at home and hope nothing was wrong. She decided she would do something. She immediately drove herself to the police station to report what she felt was an issue. The police did not hesitate to take Rebecca's statement. They knew that there was a chance an accident had happened because the storm had gotten increasingly worse. The officer in charge made a few phone calls in a few minutes. a search team was dispatched to Mark. They were even more driven by the fact that there was a baby that could be in danger. The search and rescue team were working against strong winds and heavy rain on the back roads that were full of tall trees. The street lights in this area had gone off due to the heavy storm, so it was much more difficult to find Mark. However, the team did not let the storm stop them, because even with the terrible rain and the dangerous wet back roads, they were able to trace Mark's phone, and eventually, after what was almost an hour, they found him beside his car unconscious. The engine was still running. The back door was wide open. The baby sat there unharmed, but was tired as the cold wind whipped into the car. The search and rescue team tried to get her out of the car seat and cover it up to get warm. To the surprise of the entire team, there was a stray dog in the back seat with the baby. It had placed half its body on the baby and was alert as the rescue team came and took the baby away. It followed the police officer, who had the baby in his arms and sat in the car waiting. Almost immediately after, the ambulance sped by and carried Mark away as well. He was taken to the hospital. Rebecca, they're okay. Mark has a concussion, but they're both safe, the rescuer assured her over the phone, as she was restless with worry. Rebecca almost felt like yelling, "I was right," because she knew something was wrong. She just knew it. She was glad both her husband and child were safe. Relief flooded Rebecca as she clutched her phone. She was already on the way to the hospital, and she couldn't wait to hold her baby in her arms. She got to the hospital, desperate to see her baby and her husband. She was told Mark was still receiving treatment, but he would make a full recovery. Rebecca was given full details on how her husband and daughter were found, and with tears in her eyes, she listened to the doctor recount every detail. We were surprised when she was brought to us that she was not suffering anything as a result from the rain, the doctor said. She hadn't even been cold. When we were told that the rescue team found her with the stray dog curled up against her, he saved her, if you ask me, the doctor said, smiling. Rebecca's smile vanished immediately. Did the doctor just say she was found next to a dog, and the dog was the reason the baby was safe? In all her years, she had never heard of anything like this. This was something that felt like a dream to her. On one hand, she was very grateful that her husband and child were safe. On the other hand, she could not believe a dog, the object of her fear, was the reason her husband and daughter were safe. As life settled back into what was somewhat normal, Rebecca found herself unable to shake the image of the dog that had saved her child. She tried to imagine how the dog would have been, laying close to her child, and how protected her daughter must have felt. Her thoughts led her to a new curiosity within her about dogs. She was still very much cautious of them, but something in her wanted to venture out of her comfort zone and discover more about these four-legged creatures she had dismissed all her life. A few days later, she gathered up all the courage she could find, strapped her baby into a stroller, and decided they would take a stroll to the park. It was a beautiful sunny day, and she knew there would be a few dogs playing with their owners at the park. It was a perfect opportunity to face her fears, or at least to try. Not long after she sat down on a park bench, a friendly canine approached them and barked. Rebecca's heart raced as the dog came closer. She was starting to feel crippled with fear, and was just about to stand up from the bench and leave when she heard the most beautiful sound her daughter had ever made before, the sound of her baby laughing. She looked down and saw that her baby was pointing at the dog and laughing. No sign of fear at all. The dog, loving the attention from the baby girl, wagged its tail and nuzzled its nose against her hand. Something in Rebecca melted, and she moved closer and gave the dog a gentle pat. Perhaps not all dogs were scary after all. Perhaps she could actually learn to love, or at least admire, these canine creatures. At that moment, she wondered what would happen to the stray dog that saved her daughter. She had never gone to follow up with the police or the rescue team about what happened to the dog after that night. Today, Rebecca was determined to find out. As soon as she and the baby were finished playing at the park, Rebecca walked home and called the animal shelter, where she had been told the dog that had protected her daughter had been sent. Her heart tugged in pain when the shelter gave her the worst news she had heard all week. "They say the dog has to be put down, Mark. We can't let that happen. Not after what it did for us," she declared, determination in her eyes. There was no way she was letting this dog be put down. She might not be the biggest fan of dogs, but she knew every dog deserved a loving home, especially a loyal and brave dog like this one. She would save the poor dog, just like he had saved their daughter. Mark, surprised by the change in his wife's attitude towards dogs, hesitated. "Are you sure, Rebecca? This is a big step." He was glad his wife was conquering her fear of dogs and was determined to find and save the stray dog. "I've never been more sure of anything in my life," she asserted as she grabbed the car keys and headed to the shelter. Rebecca and Mark visited the shelter to see the dog, and in one instant fell completely in love with him. It didn't take them much thought before they came into an agreement that they had to adopt this dog. It was a huge step for Rebecca, and she knew it wasn't going to be easy as she had a lot of changes to get used to, but she knew that this was the best thing to do, to help face her fears of dogs, but also to give a good animal a loving home. As she signed the adoption papers, the name came to Rebecca's head instantly. "Guardian. Let's call him Guardian," she said, and Mark nodded enthusiastically in agreement. Days turned into weeks, and Guardian flourished into the warmth of their home. He was treated as part of the family and was given all the love and attention he could possibly want. Rebecca had now completely forgotten about her fear of dogs and would eagerly take Guardian for walks in the neighborhood and in the parks. She loved watching her daughter grow with curiosity and play with the dog. Soon enough, her daughter started walking and things really became exciting for them. She was really proud of every step her daughter made. She and Mark hovered behind just in case she wobbled and fell. From the corner of her eye, Rebecca saw that Guardian was also always close behind, always ready to protect.